Mr. Bercher?
Here.
Ms. Costello?
Here.
Ms. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Schuman?
Here.
Councilman Humphreys?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here. We have
We have a quorum. Next order of business is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting, January 25th, 2016. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I'll make a motion. We approve
Okay,
the
is there a
minutes.
second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. First order of business, I guess basically the only order of business, is the discussion topic, preliminary design of the Meadows Complex, Green Springs Road, owner KBAT Food Stores, Inc., Stephen Spangler, representative. And Matt, I think you had something to say before.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Commission. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things about tonight's meeting. First of all, it's not a public comment, it's not a public hearing, so we're not going to entertain public comment at this time. This is really, the purpose is to go ahead and take a first look, preliminary look at some of the changes that have been made by KBAT after they had a charrette that they had, it was a closed charrette that they invited a few folks from the public to attend. Included in those meetings were Nick Proctor, Quinn Crockwell, this is a local landscape architect, and Scott Wilson, who's a local engineer. I think you'll see some changes to the site plan based on that. The purpose of the meeting tonight is really to receive feedback from the Planning Commission about those changes for the design team to incorporate as they go forward, and then bring an actual COA request back to the Planning Commission, which they're anticipating hopefully by the March meeting. I would go ahead and remind folks that Wednesday evening from 5 to 7 in this room, the town will be conducting a public charrette for the sports complex component, and we have about 3 new designs for folks to take a look at based on public input that we have received. If you have any questions about tonight's meeting, I'd be happy to answer them, or we can turn it over to Mr. Spangler.
One thing is, if anybody is here tonight, we ask that they sign in so that you can show that you were here and we know that you were here. If somebody's not signed in, please do so before the meeting is over. Otherwise, Mr. Spangler, I'll give you the floor.
Cheers.
Members of the Planning Commission, Stephen Spangler, Director of Real Estate, KBAT Food Stores. Thank you for the opportunity to present a progress report of sorts. To Matthew's point, I think we're just here to show where we're at. I think everybody saw the concept plan that was including with our rezoning application. We have had a subsequent meeting since then. We listened to public comment during that process, as well as the internal meetings that we've had with members of the community, and come up with this updated site plan. I will kind of want to go through each separate component of the plan, but welcome open comments, questions, issues that you see throughout. I'm going to be taking notes throughout the presentation. But based on the VDOT in town right-of-way improvements, we've since submitted a 30% plan set to VDOT and met with them regarding the Cook Street and Green Springs realignment. And one component is this traffic circle that I think the Virginia Department of Transportation engineers, our internal engineers and development team, as well as town, thought would be a good use for this particular development in this road network. So moving forward, we'll incorporate that into the design. It is large enough to accommodate trucks. The traffic requirement didn't dictate a 2-lane traffic circle, so that's a 1-lane traffic circle. We do have a straight road to the recreational component. That's not changed. and then a road tying back into Green Springs to the north of our site. As far as out parcels, we still have the 7 out parcels that we've always had throughout the design concept. As stated throughout the process, those will be sold as out parcels. So the owners of those properties will have to come before the Planning Commission and get the same type of certificate of occupancy or certificate of appropriateness, that we are in the process of getting for our property. The total acreage of our parcel is 13.76, total usable is 11.54. As stated, there's going to be a mix of hotel, restaurant, and flex uses for those properties. We do have some letters of intent in place for out parcel 1 and out parcel 6, with others in negotiation. The site design, if you recall, our initial concept was the Food City, basically right here fronting the Retail Road 1 site with basically a inline retail attached to the building. After internal conversations, meetings, and comments, public comment, we decided and thought appropriate to detach the retail components. As you see, we've got 2 pods against Retail Road 1, and then a smaller pod up Retail Road 2, and leaving your freestanding Food City concept toward Cumming Street. We pulled it away, which we think is going to help with the sight lines from the Creeper Trail, as well as additional ingress egress opportunities. With this component, we've got a pharmacy drive-through here, and then we've got a attached gas and go concept, which we've got a rendering that we can show later in the presentation. What that does is that keeps the parking on the interior of the site. So once you develop this piece of property and this piece of property, the building components will hide that asphalt area. As you can see, we also have a fairly extensive landscape earth and burn along this area, as well as above that Retail 1 component. We show areas outside of the retail components. We recessed those a bit from the parking field that will allow for patio areas, gathering areas, hardscape features, benches, and also provided pedestrian access, interconnectivity throughout the site, tying back into the recreational component. Right now we have parking, sidewalk shown on both sides of Retail Road 1. Then we're tying in throughout sidewalks coming up through here, across out parcel 2 into Retail 1. So again, to go to that pedestrian feel, we provided interconnected walking access throughout the property. Again, to landscaping concerns, especially obviously one of the main issues was view sheds from the Creeper Trail. Aside from pulling the hardscape and building areas away from the Creeper Trail, we have provided a substantial landscape berm there. We do have additional landscape areas within the parking lot. Whether or not these islands are grass or rock, that's a question that we have for the Planning Commission. From a maintenance standpoint, we've had success with rock. Obviously, if we can add some tree wells throughout there to put some greenery in there, something that we wanted to get back from the Planning Commission. One thing that it's outside of this context of this plan is during the rezoning process, I met with Mr. Miller of the Creeper Trail Club a few times. We actually walked the trail together, and he says outside of landscaping on our site, the out parcel sites and the recreational site, there's opportunities along the Creeper Trail itself to have selective buffering, and something that we'd have to work in conjunction with the town, since that is town right away. But he thought that would be an opportunity above and beyond what we've included in our preliminary site plan, at least from a sightline mitigation standpoint. Site lighting, we will have LED lights, nothing shining on the horizontal plane, 24-foot pole restriction in the overlay district we're comfortable with. It'll be on a 3-foot base. And then as far as the right-of-way lighting, that's something that we've talked through with Mr. Dew and VDOT as far as what kind of specifications for street lighting that we would have, would it tie into what's currently used in the historic district and whatnot. And that's something that we would obviously be open to hearing, additional comments and feedback on that standpoint. That kind of defines the site in an overview. I welcome any questions before we get into the elevation renderings that we have.
Any questions from anybody on the commission?
I have some questions.
Yes, sir.
What's if you had to give an average of the distance from the edge of the property to where, say, the road begins, what would the shortest distance, when you say a substantial buffer on average?
As far as like a setback?
How much of a buffer is there? Do you have like number of feet? Is it?
Well, our current plan and the way the overlay district requirements are written is that any kind of setback is based on the underlying zoning classification, which would be B2. We conform to that. As far as the specification on the berm, I do not have a height, width. It would be a landscape berm, so aside from the height itself, you would have a specific type of tree or grass or a combination thereof above and beyond that to height.
Which we'd see the next meeting.
That, exactly. There's some details that if we can get a comfort level from the commission on kind of the macro view, the next submittal, obviously, for the certificate of appropriateness would be those micro, fine-tune areas. And we'll work with Matthew as far as what the scope of that submittal would need to be to get everybody the comfort level as far as, specifications.
Other questions?
Okay. And this is just a rendering of our proposed elevation for the food city. We don't have any elevations yet for the retail shops. We will present those. But this is based on, obviously, our elevation, but the pharmacy drive-through that I alluded to earlier, as well as the attached gas and go concept adjacent to the school. As far as color, we're taking a design cue off of our current corporate offices downtown, as far as a darker brick, a little bit different colors in the fenestration components, trim to be a little bit darker than our standard food city specification, just to try to tie into the historical aspect of that.
Any questions?
Stephen, is this a one-story model or is it two stories?
It would be a one-story.
And any idea about what the height that the building is?
The front would average somewhere around that peak, somewhere around 30.
That sounds right. 32, 35, something like that.
It's a one-off store, so it's
Yeah.
going to be a little bit more than the typical.
We've done some two-story units, like Bristol, Johnson City, which we developed. We just thought on this site was a shorter elevation would be more appropriate for this than trying to put a two-story food city. Helps with, obviously, and also there's a lesser impact on the sightlines that the trail.
Not a question, but kind of a comment. This kind of looks like the same component part, and I'm glad to hear that you're talking about using the darker brown brick. and looking and drawing off the historic district, I think this is an opportunity where that you could you really do something unique, where that, like all the stores that you've done in the past, have somewhat a similar look. This would be the one that you design, and all the other stores wish they would look like ours. And I think that's your opportunity that you have to do that.
I mean, anything in particular that?
Not right this minute, no. I'd like to actually see the actual rendering.
Yep, and fair enough, we'll definitely take that back and discuss that internally. And that's kind of the comments that we're looking for tonight, just so when we, whether it's March or April or whenever, when we are in a position to do a formal presentation, submittal, that we make sure that we can anticipate some of the comments that may be available. So I'll definitely take note of that and have an internal conversation. But as far as, colors and whatnot, that's, we'll have a certain specification, and we already started putting it to paper, whether it'll be in the restricted covenants or covenants for the entire property, a certain type of material, a certain material over a certain size of the side of the building, percentage of the building. Those retail shops that we showed, and I can go back to those site plans, with their orientation to the road network, more than likely would be, all four facades would be used in some kind of treatment. So whether it's brick or a combination of brick or a different material, we would do that on four sides of the building.
I agree with Mr. Humphries. I think this would be a great opportunity to do something different, unique. The lettering, how many of those are going to be illuminated?
The Food City and the logo in the middle of the Food City is illuminated. I'm not sure, I don't think we do any illumination. Are they all illuminated?
Just to clarify, you're speaking about architecture specifically,
Architecture specifically, not, we know it's gonna be 32 foot high, whatever we're gonna do. Right now, it's just the concrete to look at it right there. Looking at it right here, the knee-jerk reaction, it looks a lot like all the other food cities. This is, since it's gonna be kind of your flagship store in there, I think that it would behoove you to do something that was, different than what's in the other stores.
To your two-story models, how different do they look like from this?
They're effectively the same elevation, just taller, and it's to accommodate mezzanine level, that, there's meeting areas, a professional kitchen and whatnot that they have. So that's access from the interior of the store. It's about additional 8,000 square feet.
But it doesn't take it in width-wise?
No.
Any additional questions? This is not, not going to take comment from the, just so, Matthew, if you don't mind, for the folks who go through the process, what we're doing tonight is basically listening to what he has to say. And I was going to ask Matthew to go through how the certificate of appropriateness is done and how public comment fits into there. I think that would be wise so everybody knows.
Sure. Like Mr. Spengler said, tonight is just an opportunity to start to look at the overview, the macro view, the 30,000 foot level, to see if there's concerns that you would have about site design, or if there are things that are of particular interest to the planning commissioners. Because when they do bring their package back to the planning commission, it will be very detailed, landscaping, colors, architecture, materials list, those types of things. Those will be, very much detailed design concepts. So they want to make sure that they're getting that right the first time, so to speak, or at least getting as close as they possibly can. So if there are concerns that the planning commission has, or things that you want to make sure that they remember to address, or that you have guidance on, I think that they would appreciate hearing that tonight, because it is difficult to put together these concepts, to come back and go, I don't really like that. Okay, this is our chance to give them feedback on what we are looking for as a community. They did take quite a bit of time to try to change it. Can you speak to that a little bit about your operations? I know that that's a concern, that it changed the strip look.
We obviously met and heard comments from the public, had some members of the public meet along with the town and the recreational staff, but we also have a lot of in-depth internal conversations. And ultimately, aside from, ensuring that we meet the town's requirements, Food City's my client as well, and they're a grocery store operator. So, they had some concerns with us, and I can put it back on as far as transitioning from our original concept, which people have labeled the strip center, as being, not unique enough. We wanted something a little bit different for Abingdon, which is fine. From an operational standpoint, I think the questions were raised internally about, okay, well, you have, the Food City is freestanding, you have these retail components across a 10-acre pad, which is ultimately going to be the pad that we retain ownership with. If it's raining, if it's a young mother, which is one of our main demographics as our shopper, and she's got 1 or 2 kids, it's much more difficult to go to the Food City and then say that there's a user or a tenant in one of the retail components to then traverse, even though we have an interconnected sidewalk configuration to traverse to each of the components. So their concern was they thought the strip center was much more efficient from an operational perspective for the shopper. It's much more consumer friendly, and we really had to push and pull internally to get them to start looking at a different concept. And I guess is that what you wanted me to allude to? Is
It's fine.
that was raised that with this inclement weather, a young mother or a mother with young children, that this is much more, it's more difficult obviously to get around than at that initial configuration. That being said, we talked about it a lot internally, and felt that with everything that's been coming back, that we decided to present this option.
And to speak to Kenny's question there, Mr. Schuman's question, the process works like this. So whether it's March or April or some point in the future, they will bring in a full package of information, site plans, landscaping plan, a lighting plan, colors, materials, architectural renderings, and things like that. It will take a significant amount of time and a lot of money outlay on that. And so they are trying to get some information from us tonight to make sure that they do a good job to present to you the first time. So if there are major concerns about those types of things, I think they would be willing to jot those down tonight and take them into consideration as they do that.
And you're not going to hurt my feelings. I've got the pen. We want to understand if we're on the right path.
So I'd like to follow up with a question to Ms. Costello. So, when you were talking about the illumination of the signs on the building, the lettering of the big signs, tell me what your concern was with that.
Well, because it's facing inward, I was worried about visibility, people not liking the look of it from the other side. I mean, anywhere it's going to face, it's going to...
Well, yeah, and what will it serve? Because, we'll have bakery on it, it'll have stuff like that on there, but people already know that they're coming there.
Yeah.
Is it superfluous to have that on there? Especially when what you're doing is, it's going to be looking outward, basically more toward the trail than it would be anywhere else, or to the berm that they're going to put in. So,
I'm of the belief of the less is better as far as...
I mean, everybody that comes there is going to know there's a bakery, and it's going to know there's vegetables, and they're going to know that there's going to be, all the commodity that's there. But if you have the big sign up there, is that serving a purpose actually? Or is that just a space filler? A space filler, yeah. So, everybody knows Food City.
Yeah.
And, hopefully they do, and then they would know, the quality of your product. So anyway, and I can see it being lit, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, is it necessarily lit, and does it have to be? I guess would be.
I think so, you know, and then we can discuss internally as far as possible options, but, you know, I think that's going to be, as far as from an operational standpoint, I think just visibility, because if you're not lighting and it's at nighttime, you're pulling in, it's a dark facade, I don't think that necessarily lends itself to inviting consumer in.
Well, I agree, you know, but is there other things that you can put instead of that that would light it, you know, literally, you're not gonna be able to control the lighting that has in it as much as it would the downward lighting. So maybe some sidewalk lights right in front of there, which would be really, really attractive, and would provide, you know, lighting that you don't normally have in a downward manner as someone's coming into your food cities, might be the perfect thing to put in there. And then that's something, your bakery sign, stuff like that could go away. People know that already. I mean, it's just not, you know, it's not, I'm not sure we're trying to convince them, we're trying to convince you all that you have it, because, you know, it's there. And it's always there.
Or you might, I mean, you can keep the words up there, but just not have them,
Lit,
yeah.
and then do some lighting sidewalk. Yeah, I mean, you know, maybe do them a little smaller. I mean, those are big letters. I mean, those are probably, what do you think those are, 10-foot letters?
No,
What are they?
that would be about 3-foot letters.
3 foot, okay, because the ones that you have over here are much bigger than 3 foot, so that's something we could hold you to now, 3 foot.
I mean, I think
Because 3
in a
foot's about this
grocery,
big, and the ones that are over here on the one in the shopping center over here, I would say probably are at least 6 foot, maybe 7.
and then you've got the gas station, that'll be all lit up like
Yeah.
a jackpot thing over there. And
We will have 0-foot candles at the property line, so it'll all be internal illumination. The other thing, I would make an observation here. I'm Luke here, I'm Vice President of Real Estate for Food City. We will have a lot of people who are not familiar with the area. Hopefully, if the recreational area comes off, we hope it will, but won't necessarily know who Food City is and what we do offer. I agree with you on the local population, knowing who we are and what we have. But for any of our visitors who are coming in, anybody who's using the motels, who are coming in from out of town to use the recreation, they're really not going to know who we are. So at that point,
You know, a lot of the travel teams and stuff like that are from, if there are travel teams, will be in Johnson City, Kingsport, all the way down to Knoxville. And you all reach all the way down to Knoxville now. So I got a feeling that those would know that. And so, you know, the demographic you're looking at might be saturated and stuff. And I'm not going to argue because I don't know, but I'm just saying that, you know, if you're going to have 0-foot candles at the line, then would anybody even be able to see if they were on the soccer fields, be able to look up there and see where it says factory or anything? You know, I mean, you know, I guess I'm trying to figure out how the light, how you do the 0-foot candles of light from those signs projecting outward without any balance. You know, I mean, how do you do that? You know, on a flat sign looking outward, how do you get the 0-foot candles in there?
well, you'll use yeah, they're internally lit,
So use
so.
an LED now for those as well, so it's not as bright as, you know, a typical channel letter on a raceway that you see.
Can you pull the actual rendering back up? And I guess one of the questions are you all through asking?
I like listening to you.
I guess one of the questions I have is, you know, all the lettering and colors are red. And is that something that, you know, is set in stone, or could it be a less intrusive color used in the lettering? You know, and maybe your centerpiece stays red, but maybe on the side you go with like a gold or something. I don't know.
Well, you know, one thing in lighting those, like that, you could use the lights that, instead of internal lights, you could actually have the lights that come down. They're going to illuminate them from the front, and then that light's going to be killed. I mean, you know, you're not going to have that bright light that's coming across. Whether if they're internally lit, it might be
Like a gooseneck fixture.
something like that. You know, something. Yeah. so.
Give it more of like an historic.
But in saying that, let me ask, I would like to ask Matthew something.
Sure.
Can you get the commission, could you get some stuff, some renderings of in historic areas and see the signage and what, of course, I know the signage is a whole completely different animal. But, as they're doing this, they might want to do something a little different if we're kind of averse to that. And especially on the overlay, because on the overlay, I don't think that.
We'll certainly take a look and see if we can find examples of historic architecture, similar types of uses. I was going to ask the question, I know that you sort of recoiled a little bit at the architecture that you see there. Are there components that you think would be more appropriate? Are there buildings that we should try to emulate? What are your feelings?
I'd like to just chime in on that. Ideally, I guess, and again, you said it's okay, we won't hurt your feelings. Let's just face it, grocery stores are not attractive from the outside. When you drive up to a grocery store, you're not like, oh, that is such a cute grocery store, I want to go shop there. So I think no matter how hard we try to make this that cute little historic kind of Abingdon feel, it's going to be really difficult. I think we're going to have to be really creative. I like the gooseneck light ideas. Facade,
Look at
lamppost ideas were good.
Look at Berry Builders. Go down, look at Berry Builders. Berry Builders from the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
They have kind of a federal style architecture in there.
Mm-hmm.
That building is absolutely something. I think if they moved out, you could look at retail moving in tomorrow, or anyone else who want to move in, and it already has an attractive facade that would attract people immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that their design's a little quirky, the way they shed up the front, because they put a flat shed on the front, and I don't like that part of it. But the building itself and the concept itself, in fact, it looks a lot. If you kind of took it loosely, like your building that you have up there, the style that's in, right, and the very builders are down in Daisy 14, very much like that, except they use an all-course of brick that's all different colors. And they use a Palladial window, which you all use a middle Palladial window. So it's something that there's some things that could be done that I think could make it more attractive. Maggie's right, Ms. Costello's right. It's like putting lipstick on the pig. It's still going to be a pig, but be more lipstick on it. And it might be a little more attractive. And I think that yours could be a lot more attractive. And that's why I was saying earlier that I think it's your opportunity to, with all the other stores, look around the area and they go, hey, we want one like Abingdon. I'm talking about your stores like Johnson City and Kingsport and all this other area that this huge area that you all have now. I think it'd be a real opportunity for you all to really kind of take the bite of the apple to say, this is where we want to go with. This is what we're looking at.
Well, I like the fact that you're willing to play with your colors like your corporate headquarters. I think that will set it apart if you can incorporate those colors and maybe even some of the stonework. You may have some of the stonework on there, I can't really tell, but if you can maybe incorporate some of the stonework like you did at the corporate headquarters. But I think I'm speaking for myself now, but I think, and I don't live too far from corporate headquarters, but I think those colors are phenomenal.
Yeah, they have a nice look, and they have a nice presence. They're a stately presence. They're stately.
And it would set sort of a precedent for the other, construction coming in.
And that's, as part of our submittal, and as part of the covenants that we have over the entire property, which will include the out parcels, we're going to want to work with Matthew and the Planning Commission to come up with some kind of cohesive requirements as far as types of materials, how much certain materials are required over a percentage of the building, colors and whatnot, just so outside of what we're showing and what we inevitably develop, as these out parcels are sold and these users are coming in to build their own little project, that it gives everybody an ability to.
You want the look. You want the look.
Cohesive.
You want the look.
Lighting, poles.
Because that'll benefit all of us. It really will. Get that look going. One of the, kind of the good and bad thing about this is that all your rows go behind all your out parcels. So your backs are going to have to look as good as your front. And that's also something at times to have a unique design or picnic area or things that normally wouldn't have, that you would see I think one of the most horrendous things I see, this is just speaking personally, is to come up from exit 14 to 17 and look up at the back of all the buildings that are there at the town center. I think that they're the cinder block buildings, and everybody's got their, big names written on the back of it. I don't think it's that attractive. I think, aesthetically, yeah, that could have been done much better. You all don't own it. That's good, that's fine, but you will own this one, so you really, a great opportunity.
And to that point, in part of going back to an operational concern and whatnot, is shifting this building this way. There's a contingent of things that we've lost some visibility, but we're willing to forego that to help with the view sheds from the Creeper Trail, to help with the overall site design. One thing, and I know Ms. Costello brought it up as far as the signage on the gas and go, some of that signage is just required through the pricing of the gas. You have to have that because it's constantly changing. We would request, at least on the site aside, in size to be determined, is to do at least some side signage for Food City, just to have a little bit more visibility from this commercial corridor.
Well, see, and that's something that Matthew could do. Matthew can find us some stuff that's done. There's a really good one off of Sharon Road in Charlotte. Matthew does that. I can't remember what the name of that.
Is that Harris here?
Is it? Okay. They have a really good plan. In fact, it's like a little community. You drive into it. It has everything from a theater to different things in there. It's like driving in a small community. You think you're in a big little town.
Parkville.
Yeah, that's
This is the one, what you're talking about, the one on the corner of Carmel and Sharon?
It is, yeah, it's on the corner of Carmel and Sharon, because my sister lived on, she used to live on Carmel Park.
Yeah.
And so, but instead of going toward the mall right there, you take a left and go toward Sharon. So that's got they've got a pretty good design on that. And then there's some others that I'm sure that are around. They're in historic areas or on the outskirts that have been covered before. And that would, probably we can even see like you're talking about the pricing for gas. Because I know that I saw one that had the gas that looked like a little, I don't know what it was, maybe it was a 3x4, like a advertising, it looked like a sign, but it had the gas prices right there. They were eye level, they weren't up, but they were very, it was very attractive, And
Some of them place the pricers on the median islands like you have.
Yeah, it is. It is the way Kroger is now.
Yeah, like between on the,
Kroger.
like right in front of where you have the gas to go along the road, in that median grass area, you would have a eye-level pricer with a sign, little sign above it, right there. That type of thing.
And that kind of leads into operations standpoint away from what we do. So we can have that conversation and to kind of piggyback on building signage, I think we anticipate working with Matthew and the staff and also presenting something along with the rest of the submittal, a comprehensive signage plan for the entire development. So whether it's the pylon at the proposed pylon at Cummings Street, as well as what each out parcel is allotted, whether it's just a monument sign, what kind of specification they'll be allowed for their project, and then obviously we would touch on building signage as well.
As far as visibility goes, you will have a probably substantially sized sign at the new entranceway. So I don't think visibility will be much of an issue if you've got that hanging out there.
But you're still looking at overlay. You're still looking at, it'll have to put guidelines on overlay. So that'll help make it determine some size down and downward.
I can see a sign where he just pointed and then one right at the turning, a low profile sign there.
Yeah, low profile would be great.
But as far as like visibility out on the face of the building, you'll know that's the grocery store when you turn in there, it'll be obvious.
Once again, instead of looking like everyone else, you're going to set the standard for everyone else. Everybody's going to be looking at it going like, this is what we want, this is what we should have done.
And this orientation is, in my opinion, a better orientation than strip mall planning.
I like it
don't
better,
think strip
too.
mall works. I think the idea was great. People pull up to one space and walk, but we're not all that that we think we are these days, and a lot of people will get back in their car, back out and go over to the other,
Yeah, you're right about that.
so.
Thank you for addressing that. That was a question I was going to revisit, because I think one of the things that they want to know is, are they on the right track? You know, these things that they can move forward
Very much
with.
so. Yeah, I think so, very much so.
And haven't you done a similar thing like this, or you were part of a much larger development like this in Knoxville, where you were separate? And they were all,
Well, we've had freestanding stores, and, you know, we develop a lot of our centers, but a lot of times we are just a tenant in a developer center. So a lot of times the site dictates how the buildings are oriented. And we've had freestanding food cities, and we've had food cities with shops and that. We just completed one in Johnson City, which was part of an overlay district that we had to go above and beyond. But with that, we had the same footprint actually of the food city with about 7,500 square feet of shops attached.
And I guess one thing I would like, because I was always wondering where that your loading and unloading docks are gonna be, where the loading and unloading docks are, they're up, they're very good, very good. Because, you know, I know some concern is, you know, when the unloading and loading and the sound, and so we're gonna be able to get a buffer or something in there, there'll be a berm, a buffer, something where it's gonna hopefully mitigate most of that sound and noise.
Yes, and that right there, again, to mask this,
Right.
as well as to mitigate this, what you're just talking about, would be a very substantial burn.
Yeah.
Do you know approximately how high that berm will be? How deep?
And that, you know, that is something that we'll have with our submittal. You know, we'll work internally and see what would be appropriate, how much room we have to work, how much material we have to use.
So, and the other members, Chris and everybody, so like, if you were looking at this in the back, this is gonna be the old Green Springs Road to the left of where the colorized version is. Do you think that would be one that would need more berm, or less berm and more landscaping? You know, do you think that that's one where that could be something that would be more beneficial to the public, or berm it up and they couldn't see it or use it?
can you delineate exactly what?
Yeah, right behind the corner down here, right there. But that berm will be right there to block that off from.
I would point out the elevation change between the original Green Springs Road and the new road and the berm is nearly 40 feet.
40 feet.
So if you're looking at it on a line of sight, from that point, if you're down on Green Springs Road, it probably wouldn't take much of a berm to block that.
Right.
Having said
Yeah.
that, we understand what you got, or at least I think we understand what you guys are looking for, and it's our intent to put a significant berm around that would probably be more along the lines of looking at the line of sight with Cumming Street, because that's going to be probably the similar elevation.
Right.
And you've got, other than the berms along the right of way, you've got opportunities to do additional landscaping behind the building.
Right, yeah, picnic area, different things are down through there. You were talking about mothers and bringing their children, and, you know, something that you could, you know, maybe something where mothers could.
Steve, Michelle, between 3 and 4, we've attempted to address that. That, although it doesn't look like it to scale, that's a patio area that we're anticipating right there.
Right.
Up next to Retail 1, on both sides, that's another area.
Elongating this to have some side.
Yeah, that's the most exciting, you know, when you do this, when that do that added value,
Mhm.
that's exciting to me. You know, it really bodes well for your customers, and says you're trying to look out for a lot of what they're doing. The other thing is if there's a 40, I'm thinking about 40 foot, the 40 foot, you're talking about where the road's gonna hit in. I'm sure you're going to have a plan on what it's gonna look like behind those people's houses,
Right.
to whether we're not destroying their, you know, I mean, their backyard viewscape is straight up the hill. And, but, you know, I like for it to make sure that it's as nice as straight up the hill now as it can be. That's not a big thing in Turkey.
Yeah, and ultimately, this becomes a town project, and we would help in any which way to tie in what we can do on our property versus, you know, the roadway property, but, you know, something to work through as a group.
So is the road a definite then, or is that the upgrade of that, of the rebuild and everything? Is that
They're using the VDOT plans that are I think 60% is that we're at? 70% now. So they've just incorporated those into this site plan. And I should have said something a little bit about that being, it's sort of, it's set now. 70% anyway, put it that way.
Well, I really like, I like the VDOT embracing the roundabout. I think that's a really good concept. It's one that we really could use in a couple other places and not use up so much property.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns about that road.
As far as?
The impact on the residents. I mean, if I lived in that house right there, I would not like what's going to happen right there. I would say, oh, this is not good.
Which house are you looking at?
The first one at the top.
Right there?
I mean, look how thin that is from their backyard to the road. If that's
How far
40
is that from
foot,
their backyard to the road, do you think? Well, right now, their backyard's straight up and down right now, anyway, pretty much.
You have to see what's there.
Right now, it's a
It's,
one.
it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
And, and I
at
would-
this point in time, they have traffic that sits in front of their house
Right.
at prime time. Because I've tried and you can't, there's no sidewalks there, you can't walk there. So the fact that this is going to be a cul-de-sac is going to be, I would think, a great improvement for the people with houses
I would
along
think-
there, as long as they're not getting a lot of visibility from the back.
Right. I would think, yeah, I agree with that. I would think, everybody when they're looking at subdivision, they like to be in a cul-de-sac where their kids can play and they can walk out in the yard, they can park their cars and not have to worry about getting run over. So I think that would be a positive for it, not a negative. Be a little enclave.
and I guess we should probably make sure that that's not like a wall. It's more of a stepped or terraced kind of, all around the property should be like.
Yeah, whatever VDOT can do,
Yeah.
that'll be VDOT and us, I guess.
Yeah, that's their portion of the project.
Probably wouldn't be bad, Matthew, to have some pictures of how it looks now,
Yeah.
so that folks can,
Right,
because I think it's hard to
It is, that's why I'd
conceive.
like to have this, I'd like to have a copy, I do not have a copy of this. This is the first time I've seen this, so I would like to take this and walk the site, and I'll probably come up with a lot more questions at that point. But I'd like to be given an opportunity to be able to really
It
get out
may
there
be
and see how it
beneficial
goes.
to schedule
Filter.
with a field trip with Mr. Spangler and Mr. Crittendall individually. I mean, I know that that's something that people sort of, get a little antsy about, but it is completely fine. I mean, if you wanted to go out and walk the site or take a look at it with them, I'm sure you guys would do that.
Oh, yeah, try to accommodate your schedule as best as possible. I don't think we're ready to release this, because this is kind of a work in progress, but to walk the property with the plan, I'd be happy to do that.
And then,
I would like to do that.
this is part of what their application says, is that we can go out and walk on this. Part of the application now says that before it never did, and we bought this back not too long ago from what's his name?
Mike Chandler.
Mike Chandler. And basically, when they fill it out, it says now that we can go up on the property, we can walk on that property, we can look at it and do a survey on our own. We should certainly talk and call them prior to it. But there's nothing that says that we couldn't do a field trip all together out there, Matthew, and just post it at the meeting.
We could do that. We could do that. Is there interest from the entire group in doing it that way?
I think due diligence would mean that we should.
At least it would be good to offer that if
It makes it a little bit difficult with everybody's schedule. That's why I offered, it's a little easier for them to work around everybody's individually.
We can do it either way, whichever is
Whichever way.
easiest for the board. I can meet individually, or obviously if we can all get together.
I think if we can get together as much of me as of us can, and then the ones that can't, they can take them individually. But I think it looks more, it gives it more, it gives the process more, it gives it more transparency. And, and I think that, people don't understand what the board actually does, and my commission does. And so at least, this would be out in the open, and it would be, go ahead.
I was just going to say, John did point out a very important thing here, is that the application states the planning commission can go out.
Well, I know.
It's not open
I know.
to just anyone to go out.
Right, I know, it is only planning commission, is only
Right.
that
But
requires.
one thing I think is important is, when this comes up for a vote on the certificate of appropriateness, there will be opportunity for public input at that time.
At that point, we'll-
And that's, while we're just looking at and discussing this tonight, and when it comes time for a certificate of public appropriateness, then there will be opportunity for comment and question. I just want to make sure.
And I don't want to throw Mr. Spangler under the bus, but there's nothing that says that anybody here at this meeting can't call them up and say, gosh, I think it would be better if you did this or that. Is there, Matthew?
No.
I welcome that.
Yeah, so, you know, if any of you all, if anybody that has it says, you know, listen, I saw that, and, you know, we couldn't comment on it, but I think if you did this or that, that might be a little better, or a little more palatable, and I think that's not hurt at all.
Well, another, again, I mean, I guess the good thing about the interior or internal face of buildings, this keeps all the noise and the light and the activity away from those residents along that strip. They just have to worry about any runoff.
Yeah, because one of the
It
things.
will have an environmental impact.
Well,
And one of the things, in terms of the lighting, that I think is important to remember, I guess it's because what I do for a living, but is that there has to be enough light to make it safe. You know, so there will be, even though it'll be lower level, there will be a certain, you know, in the parking lot, because there has to be.
Kenny also walks his dog on Valley Street, and we know, and we know going across the crosswalk sometimes in downtown, it's tough, isn't it, man? It's the lights are low down there, and sometimes cars get really close before they see you.
I tell you what, my little dogs learned that you don't poke your nose out into the crosswalk before the cars stop.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, I just want to make sure everybody understood what the process
Sure.
was. That it doesn't.
And I'll look at some dates. I'll send out probably 2 or 3 dates, and then we'll go from there.
Just one other question about, once you come up with the final design for the Food City building, these out parcels, their design will be congruent with your design.
Well, I think
Is that
what we're going
correct?
to try to do with the covenants that we put over the development, what we agree upon with the commission, is put a certain specification on types of materials over a certain percentage of the building as a minimum, colors and whatnot. But ultimately, it's going to come up to those developers or individuals or corporations that buy the property to go through the same process as far as how they design their site, building, you know, architecture and whatnot. So
Each
we
one
can
would
try
have its
to-
own separate
They can come to
review
us.
for appropriateness.
Yeah, they come to us, but I was just wondering if there was any overall.
And
One of the things that, to echo with what Jan is saying, and Stephen and I have talked and Lou about this, is when we did the Virginia Highland Small Business Technology Park, we set forth, the town owned that property, still owns the property, except for the parcels that are sold, and we created design guidelines for that, and they were recorded, and so that's one of the suggestions I've had for them. And that doesn't mean that even though the design guidelines say certain things, that we can't modify those even when they get at this level. But I think it's very important that they do just what you're doing.
And as we market these properties, we want to be upfront with potential users to let them know that this is what you have to design to, so they're not coming on board and entering into a contract with not realistic expectations that probably your current specification may have to be improved, or you're going to be using more brick, or you're going to have expanded landscaping. So it helps us in marketing properties to those end users.
It should be a positive.
It very well can be.
Will be.
It would be, exactly. You know, I think with the users that we're targeting, you know, everyone that we have under letter of intent is a new user to the market. I think with this property, I think with the town of Abingdon, I think with what the town's doing with the recreational facility, and it being an overall development, it's helping a lot with the marketing of the development.
So, kind of this is off the subject, it's the sidewalk. So when do you think that you'll be able to announce to people that you have your letter of intent? When will we be doing some announcements about who they might be?
Well, you know, generally, we need to define the site, get a plat recorded before we can effectively go to contract.
Right.
And that's why they're in the status that they're in. There's 2 users that would have to be already closed on a piece of property. We obviously can't sell a property or enter into a contract until we have that plat completed and recorded and we can convey property, so. And that's really up to the end users. Some of them are comfortable after going to contract.
I was just wondering.
Some of them want to wait till closing and do the announcement
I was
themselves.
just being nosy.
So I can't answer.
You,
What's needed? Thanks, Greg.
Can I ask about the walkability of it all? I mean, you were talking about, pedestrian, you're going to submit a separate pedestrian plan and everything, but for now, can you just give like a general, like, well, go over here
I
and
think
then crosswalk over
and
here?
John and Tim, jump in if I say anything wrong, but, this is an existing sidewalk, or will be a sidewalk with the improvements on Cumming Street. The plan is to have a sidewalk come down this area, or come down this 3-line Cook Street, around roundabout, across the roundabout, down the entire run of Retail Road 1 on both sides. So you'll tie into our property, these two out parcels, but then you also have an ability to cross and have a sidewalk on parcel 6 and out parcel 5. To get into our development, you'll have a dedicated walkway right there. Or if you're coming from the recreational facility or you walk by that, you have a dedicated walkway to get to this retail component. Have a dedicated walkway up that way to access the retail 1 from the recreation, and this will tie in to here, and then from the recreational facility, tie in some of this sidewalk, and you'll also have a sidewalk that will terminate at the end of this outpost.
And I assume the speed limit's going to be like what?
That would be a town.
That would be town
But what would
determination.
it,
Probably 25, 15 to 25. What do you think, Greg? Yeah, and I've got a question about, and actually, and just in looking at that, kind of brought to my mind is down at the Green Springs Road where we're going to put a cul-de-sac in, what type of access are we going to have? Are we going to have steps? Is it going to be a graduated sidewalk to get up to the other sidewalk on Cummings? So that they'll have access back over into Shawnee's and that kind of stuff over there. That's not for you, Steve, that's for Greg.
it's a town.
I know, that's fucking great, that was great.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something we have to look at.
Because it doesn't look like there's anything done there, is why I'm asking. And I would assume that we need to probably do something.
Not sure that's a question for.
It is, no, I said, I said Greg, I said Greg. What's up, the other commissioners?
as far as the landscaping versus rock issue, for me, I'd rather see the landscaping. I don't see real vegetation. I like at the end of the parking rows, the islands, capping the ends, and the center as well. I think that's one of our huge problems with our code is our parking lots are just open. And it's like some sort of daredevil game when you go, especially going out to the market.
And we recognize that.
Getting
And-
chicken.
And, as far as, this is not the final landscape plan, whether we have additional tree wells or whatnot. The issue with whether that's grass or rock is again, it's maintenance. That if you have, our stores have customers there during the time that most landscape maintenance companies would be on site. And if you have cars parked over that landscape area, it's hard for them to maintain. If there's cars there and somebody's mowing that, then obviously cars can get chipped and whatnot. So we've had both in our developments and come that with other municipalities, a happy medium is to do additional tree wells to get that green space, but then to have rock in some of those islands. I mean, that's going to be a dedicated island where you can't get from there to there to alleviate some of your concerns, but it's more of a maintenance issue with having grass versus rock, and when you have customers there.
I prefer the term river stone.
Right.
It's a flat stone, it's not like we're dumping pressure run in there or something.
Yeah, but I can tell you what, I guarantee you that there would be people, there'd be landscaping companies chomping at the bit to do night work there. They come in there and they do it in the evening after everybody left. So, I mean, I guarantee you it would be. So, I don't think that's going to be the problem, it's going to be what the concept is. I'd like to see more trees on the, on there. I do know one thing though, when you can't cross those, you know, if there's not walkways in between a couple of them, I don't know about you all, but I go take my buggy out, I'm halfway down one of the rows, and I go, wait a minute, my car's 2 rows over. So you're not gonna be able to cut 2 rows over to get to it, you're gonna come all the way back around.
You gotta think, we're gonna go out.
I know that, I know that, but.
And we agree with you. I mean,
But you're gonna be walking down there anyway, right? Because you got a
That's
fully
right.
connected sidewalk.
Actually, yeah, and I'm not planning on being that close to it, so.
You will need to go back to your car. Kind of to that point too, I just gotta say, I mean, I think to appease a lot of these concerns and a lot of sort of the opposition's concerns, this is an opportunity, sort of like you said, to add real green space into here. I mean, like 10% more or something like that, because I think we're getting an artificial picture of what this looks like because there's so much green on the map. But once all those other parcels are developed, there's going to be a whole lot of gray. And so, you know, I don't know any positives of how to get to that point, but I think that the more you can make this look like a park, my vision for this is like you're saying, it's kind of like a little town with a theme, but it's also a park or something that you actually might want to walk around that. Some people may want to come park and walk around that like it was a walking trail or something like that. I mean, to me, that would be the ultimate sort of home run, is
Would
to
be, you know,
add that element, and not just be an example to other buildings or other grocery stores, but to other towns to say, this is smart development. And I realize that stuff is tree hugging, sort of unicorns and rainbows type of approach because of the costs involved and things like that, but I think that would be, from my perspective, your biggest bang for your buck as far as appealing to people who are gonna sympathize with sort of outdoor recreation and the creeper trails sort of aesthetic and all of those things. That's really gonna be the, you know, I can't see that. I'm sure nobody really intended to do this, but that row of trees to the right of the road, if you're driving west to east along there, are they really gonna be there if there's a hotel and a restaurant sitting there? And will they just be a Bradford pear in a concrete well? I mean, to me, that's the difference. It's
I
gonna,
think you're right, Dr. Burchard, and I think that one of the things as you look at that you have Kevin Sigmund, who has been working on the UTC, which is an urban tree canopy. And the urban tree canopy is to try to increase how many trees and how many plantings we're doing locally. And it's really surprising that Abingdon falls below Blacksburg. They fall below most towns in Virginia of having less tree canopy than many other communities. One of the reasons is we have farms and bringing stuff that they give up in farmland. But this is a chance where you really could add to your UTC, and Kevin could tell you some of the stuff that would help add to that.
yeah, we talked to
Are there any sort of tax incentives for state or localities?
There's actually tax incentives in the town of Abingdon. You can put out one tree and we'll pay for it. Is there any? There probably is. And Kevin would be a good resource person. He's only here on Fridays.
I think there,
But and I said there probably is something about the
I
UTC.
think there is, I think there is something.
Additional questions or comments?
Could you, I can't see from here what the square footage of all those buildings are. Do you have it on there?
61, this is right at 10, 5,500.
Okay.
So we'd be right at 85,000 total gross leasable area. Which, just to give you some context, that's less than Washington Crossing, which is the Magic Park Shopping Center, much less than Town Center across the road. So just to give you some scale, but this is not going to be some overburdened development as far as
Less than Kmart itself.
Correct.
Yeah, it's less than Kmart.
Kmart itself, wow. Well, I really do like it split up, and I do think you're on the right track. I think that's and I understand your concerns, but I think it's going to be like the baseball field, build it and they'll come.
I think Matthew will back me up on this one. This is kind of where modern planning of retail sites is headed. It's already being done.
We had lots of discussions.
Dr. Burchard, just, to kind of expand on, this is obviously going to remain green space up here. This is detention area.
so where are you said there were 7 parcels?
Here's our parcel, here.
Okay.
It's just hard for us to see.
Yeah, it's probably not defined, so.
And I'll not speak for Matthew, but I will for a second. You know, as part of your process, we'll put together the design criteria. We're going to work with staff on that. Looking forward to it. We've had a good working relationship with them so far, see no reason that should change. But as each one of these individual out parcel owners come for their certificate of appropriateness, that's the time that you guys have the opportunity to address the concerns regarding the trees and green space to reflect what the needs of the town are relative to each one of those individual developments. So I think it can be mitigated in a reasonable way.
And I think they've done a good job. I know that we talked about this today, about the parking. That's actually, it looks like a lot of parking, but it's actually less than what our ordinance requires, by just a fraction. It's something the planning commission can easily reduce the amount of parking that is required, and that seems logical in this particular case. But I just wanted you to know that they are working very hard to design a good product.
Additional questions or comments?
I'm just going to make one more point, and it's a minor point, but I think it's an important point, is that, you know, these out parcel uses are imperative to, I think, the town's ability to, you know, increase the tax base, because obviously what we're going to develop increases the tax base from the real estate perspective, sales, lodging, mills tax, but all these other additional out parcels are necessary, you know, whether they're bigger bit or whatnot. The amount and the acreage is really important as far as, you know, having that ability to increase the tax base and to justify, you know, further investment into the other portions of the road.
Could you point out the detention areas again, please?
They're not finalized, but here will be a detention area. This will be part of a larger pond. I think there's some areas here that will also have.
That would help if they were a little more residential.
You're not gonna have, you're not allowed to have your trees around your detention pond, so.
Not sure.
I think we did, there was one, it was just done, that had some trees around it.
Fairfax County has removed theirs.
We just finished the project. We didn't finish the project, we got to finish the project.
Pond, so.
Oh, yeah, that Hickok
Downtown
farm.
Hickok, they tore that happened with Hickok Fern ones. They tore that down, they put there's a holding pond down there, or a mitigating pond, or retention pond, or whatever you want to call it, and it has trees around it.
Well, I was going to ask, do we have anything that dictates like the blue grasses around detention ponds?
Well, and this is something that Mr. Kirkendall can probably speak to a little bit better than I can, but it doesn't have to be a pond. It could be biocell or bioretention area. There are other BMTs that are acceptable to use, but some of it will probably be a pond, if I'm not mistaken. It's the original plan.
You'll have some that you'll just use for straight out detention, which just mitigates the outflow. They're all going to be, per se, around the site will be dry facilities. There'll be a mixture of rain gardens used for water quality. And of course, the natural pond areas out there now, that's already retention, retaining that water. That would be augmented to retain more water and to help mitigate the water quality.
Yeah.
Any additional comments, questions?
I'll send out a few dates and times to the commission, and we'll see if we can't make it work out. It may be a 2-day, event where some of you can make one date but not the other.
Mr. Spangler, thank you for coming and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and your feedback and input.
I guess the next order of business would be the Director of Planning report. Do you have anything additional?
Not right at this time, other than I'll schedule those field trips. And I will remind folks again, Wednesday evening, 5 to 7, public charrette for our sports complex component, which is adjacent to this site. That will be in this room. I know that we have at least 2 or 3 more designs to bring back based on public input.
Anything additional from the planning commission? If not, is there a motion that we adjourn?
Are we going to SWAT tonight?
I think we'll not SWAT.
Not SWAT tonight?
Not SWAT tonight. Is there a motion?
You might want to tell him what SWAT is. Tell him, you might want to tell about what SWAT is.
Well, it's, let's see, what is it?
Strengths,
Weaknesses, and
opportunities.
yeah. We normally talk a little bit about that, but I think given the fact that we've had a fairly lengthy meeting, we'll move on. Is there a motion that we adjourn?
I move. So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
It's
Your
SWAT.
signature is
SWAT.
the ones you got to sign. Greatly appreciate it.
That's okay.